Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for checking the video out today. We have more PlayStation news, rumors, and leaks to go over and cover today. So before we dive into these topics, do me a big favor. If you end up enjoying the video or finding it informative, be sure to leave it a like. And if you are new here to the channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button as well. We're starting here with a pretty exciting topic that seemingly came out of nowhere. Apparently, Lionsgate is fielding proposals for a new AAA John Wick game. Reading from PlayStation Universe, John Wick has his fourth cinematic adventure upcoming, though his appearance in video games has been inconsistent to say the least. John Wick Hex is a very popular and well-made game, and John Wick Chronicles brings you into the world through VR, but Wick has yet to receive the big AAA treatment. According to Lionsgate's chief executive officer, however, that treatment isn't necessarily off the table by any means. In fact, the studio has already begun fielding proposals for a new John Wick title, though of course that doesn't come close to meaning anything is set in stone. Quote, "I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but we believe there is a big AAA game to be made out of John Wick. We have been fielding proposals. We certainly are interested in moving that forward, but I don't want to say anything more about that at this time." End quote. So this is something that frankly gets me very excited, because a AAA John Wick game is something that to me seemed obvious for some time now. There is a lot there that I think would make for a great video game, and at this point, obviously, I'm going to be hoping that PlayStation makes a play for this. I hope that Sony sees this and says, you know what, maybe we should try to get involved here. PlayStation Studios is, in my opinion, the most talented team of studios in the world, and I think that they could definitely create an amazing John Wick game. I'm sure that there are many other studios out there that would be just as well equipped to do so, but I would just love to see a really highly polished AAA John Wick game. And you know, when it comes to AAA games, PlayStation Studios, I think they've kind of earned a reputation, and because of that, I just feel like they would be a great fit. So let me know what you guys think about this. Let me know which studio, it doesn't necessarily have to be a PlayStation studio, that you would like to see develop a AAA John Wick game. Moving on to the next topic, we're talking about Final Fantasy 16. We have new information to go over and cover. Starting here with PlayStation Universe, it says, speaking during an interview with Famitsu, Final Fantasy 16 producer Naoki Yoshida has revealed that development of the highly anticipated JRPG is roughly 95% complete. Furthermore, Yoshida-san was asked when we'll finally get a release date set in stone beyond the summer 2023 window, to which he replied, quote, "We plan to release the information again later this year, so I think we can say it at that time. I don't think it's going to be over the summer, so I think it's okay." End quote. As mentioned, the producer confirmed that the game's development is almost complete, with the team playing through Final Fantasy 16 day by day and making improvements where appropriate. Quote, "Anyway, the scale of the game is large, so debugging takes a lot of time. Almost all programmers are fiddling with code to fix bugs." End quote. So there we have it. We're hearing from the producer of Final Fantasy 16 that the game is at this point 95% complete, which is awesome to hear. It sounds like they're making great time here. I mean, it seems like there's a really good chance that Final Fantasy 16 could release very early in the summer of next year, and it sounds like the team is going to have plenty of time to just focus purely on polishing the game and making sure it's as close to 100% as it can be before it launches, and I think that's all great news. But continuing to talk about Final Fantasy 16, we're getting confirmation of a new Game Plus mode, as well as difficulty settings such as story and hardcore. Reading from Push Square, it says a new wave of Final Fantasy 16 interviews are doing the rounds, and some new details are well worth pointing out. In particular, Japanese publication 4Gamer has a lengthy article that confirms the existence of what sounds like an extensive New Game Plus mode. The director of the game states that after completing the game, you can run through it a second time with all of your unlocked abilities and equipment intact. On top of that, the main character Clive's level will be carried over to a fresh playthrough, and the enemies of that playthrough will apparently be adjusted accordingly. In other words, this sounds like a proper New Game Plus. The development team also wants players to know that there will be a range of difficulty settings that should satisfy just about everyone. A dedicated story-focused difficulty eases the challenge of combat scenarios, and it sounds like it'll let you chain attacks and special moves together automatically. There's mention of a hard setting as well, but the developers didn't go into too much detail. And finally, the interview reiterates that more information, a release date based on what we know, will be made available by the end of this year. So yeah, again, more good information on Final Fantasy 16, and closing it out here, apparently they did also confirm that Final Fantasy 16 has a lot of side stories throughout the main narrative. This is another interview that was done with IGN with the game's director, and he was asked about the story's linearity and if any optional side quests are going to be there to expand on the lore. He said, quote, "The part that we call the main story is a rich, expansive narrative that moves forward without any branching points. However, there are lots of side stories interspread around the main story. Their side stories give a lot of insight into the lore and shows different sides of the characters. It's not a game that you can finish in its entirety by only following the main story," end quote. So there you go. If you're looking forward to Final Fantasy 16, getting some good information on the game here, and I think that most people are going to be happy to hear about having lots of side stories and side quests alongside the main narrative. So let me know your thoughts on all this new information. Next up, I just want to briefly talk about Forspoken, because Sony has been releasing new trailers kind of outlining various magic types, the different functions of the cuff, and just kind of, I think, once again highlighting the strongest aspect of Forspoken, in my opinion, that being just the combat and how unique it is, how it really does seem to be very diverse with the type of spells you can use. And so I just wanted to kind of add this in here as well, because even though we are hearing a lot about Final Fantasy 16, and obviously people are very excited for this game to come next year, I think some people maybe are forgetting that Forspoken is launching on January 24th for PS5, and I think that, you know, it's one of these games that has a lot to prove. It's a new IP, but I will say that the more they show of the combat, the boss battles, and just everything you can do, the more I find myself getting somewhat excited to play this game. So just figured I would give you a small update on that. Next up, we're talking about Bungie and how they want Destiny 2 PS5 players to stop playing the PS4 version. Reading from PlayStation Lifestyle, it says in its latest blog post, Bungie has given Destiny 2 PS5 players a heads up that a notable number of them are playing the PS4 version of the game. This is despite having the power to run the game with better performance and visuals. When the console first launched, even enthusiasts like ourselves found ourselves downloading the wrong version of the games. Often the PS5 and PS4 versions were not clearly labeled, and our current gen system downloaded the last gen version of games. This could explain why many Destiny 2 PS5 players are playing the PS4 version of the game instead. Thankfully, Bungie is able to track both the platform and version of the game that users are playing and whether there's a mismatch. Clearly, there are enough mismatches to dedicate part of This Week at Bungie to warning those on PS5 to check which version of the game they have downloaded. So yeah, I wanted to cover this because first off, I think it's kind of funny, but you do have to wonder how many people are maybe going to be reading an article on this or listening to This Week at Bungie, or reading This Week at Bungie, I mean, and realize, wow, I've been playing the PS4 version of this game on my PS5 this whole time. I had no idea. Crazy to think. So I guess I'm just trying to relay the message here for anybody who's listening to this that does play Destiny 2 on PS5. You might want to double check that you're not accidentally playing the PS4 version. Next up, we have some really good news for PS5 and sales. I have an article here that's titled, "Hold on, PS5 just outsold Switch in Japan somehow." So this is coming from Push Square. They say regular readers will know all too well that we don't tend to cover Japanese sales charts these days because Nintendo is just so utterly dominant that it barely counts as PlayStation-related news. But today, things are different. The latest Japanese hardware charts are in, and shockingly, the PS5 actually managed to outsell the Switch last week, not by much, but it did happen. Famitsu has the PS5 at 38,866 units, while the Switch moved 38,634 units. Again, we're talking a marginal victory here, but a victory for Sony all the same. So how is this possible? Well, as we've seen elsewhere in the world, a huge increase to PS5 stock has bolstered sales numbers across the board, and it'll be a similar story in Japan. So yeah, I just wanted to take a moment to highlight this because it is kind of a big deal for the PS5. I mean, this is absolutely a razor-thin victory here for the PS5, but it is a great sign for the PS5 in Japan, and honestly, a great sign for the PS5 in general, because as we are clearly seeing week over week, the stock is getting better and more people are going out there and picking one up. But moving on to the final topic of the video, it's an article here from PlayStation Lifestyle that says God of War Ragnarok is the best reviewed PS5 game and 2022's second highest rated game. They say now that God of War Ragnarok reviews are out, it can officially be said that Santa Monica's latest is the highest rated PS5 game thus far. Not only that, but with a Metacritic aggregate score of 94 out of 100 based on 117 reviews, God of War Ragnarok is also 2022's second best reviewed new game behind From Software's Elden Ring, which sits at a 96 out of 100 based on just 84 reviews. God of War 2018 also earned similar universal acclaim and also sits at a 94 out of 100 based on 118 reviews. Unlike the 2018 entry, which was helmed by Cory Barlog, God of War Ragnarok was led by Eric Williams. Fans initially expressed concerns about the change, but we can all rest assured now that we are in for a treat come next Wednesday. And it continues by saying here, prior to God of War Ragnarok, the highest rated first-party PS5 title was 2020's Demon's Souls remake, which sits at a 92 out of 100. So I think maybe some people may have forgotten about that. And yeah, you know, it just goes to show how good Ragnarok really is. I mean, look, Elden Ring is still ahead here, but I would say that something we should take into account is that God of War Ragnarok seems to have quite a few more reviews compared to Elden Ring. And so, you know, with that in mind, there's a higher chance of potentially having lower scores. And so, you know, I just think that's something maybe worth keeping in mind here. But I think it's safe to say at this point that the Game of the Year battle for 2022 will likely be between both Elden Ring and God of War Ragnarok. And it really is reminiscent of 2018 when the major battle was between God of War at that time going up against Red Dead Redemption 2. And I think quite a few people were shocked when God of War actually won out over Red Dead 2. So some really good stuff here. And, you know, I also just want to mention something really briefly here before ending this video, just because I think it's kind of funny and a lot of people probably don't remember this, but on January 1st, 2020, Cory Barlog said, "First tweet of the new decade, Eric Williams remembered that name." And at the time, a lot of people were speculating that, you know, Eric Williams was going to play a major role in the next God of War game, because you also have to remember that the only announcement we had up to this point of this tweet was just the splash screen letting us know that Ragnarok is supposed to be coming in 2021. And it's just funny to kind of look back on this and see where we are now and realize that, yeah, not only was Eric Williams set to direct the game, but Cory Barlog was trying to let us all know that, hey, you know, he's going to be pretty much the next Cory Barlog because Cory passed the torch to him to take on Ragnarok. And, you know, you look at where it's sitting with the reviews, I think it's safe to say that Eric Williams absolutely nailed it and did a fantastic job. And I think will kind of be viewed as, you know, just a force within the industry now because of what him and, you know, not just him, but obviously the entire team at Santa Monica has been able to achieve. So I'm sure they're feeling really good right now. I imagine that being a developer working on a game for this long with, you know, the stakes being this high, you know, you have a ton of anxiety come review day, and to see that it's sitting at a 94, you're probably breathing the biggest sigh of relief, and it must be such a great feeling. So just wanted to kind of point that out because I thought it was pretty cool. But that's going to do it for the video, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. I hope you did find it informative. Again, if you did, be sure to leave it a like, subscribe if you're new, hit the bell notification icon, and feel free to share the video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.